I've lamented for years that I want a second edition of Brass with beautiful artwork because, boy, the original one was ugly. But damn, is it a good game. And when this Kickstarter was announced, I did a jig of glee. I was finally getting what I wanted. And we were lucky enough to also get the sister game, the sequel, if you will. And that's what I'm going to feature today, Brass Birmingham. In Brass Birmingham, the players are entrepreneurs during the Industrial Revolution attempting to start up industries in an effort to score points via selling product and commodities and creating a thriving transport network. To score points, you must flip your industry tokens. For coal, iron, and beer, when the final commodity is removed, the tile will be flipped and ready to be scored during a scoring phase. Manufacturing, cotton mills, and pottery will be flipped when you take a sell action to a connected market tile on the side of the board. Your hand is made up of cards consisting of two types, location cards and industry cards. As an action, you can play a card to build an industry. Building an industry will cost you an amount of coins and often will also require building material. If coal is required, you take a coal from the closest coal mine connected via links. This could be either yours or an opponent's coal mine. When iron is required, you can take it from anywhere on the board, even ones that aren't connected by links. You can also take an action to build a link. Play a card from your hand and pay the cost required and place the link onto the board connected to your network. Now that you have some industries and a network of links, you can play a card to take a sell action. If there's a series of links connecting an industry to a market tile featuring its product, you can flip the industry tile to its scoring side. Each industry tile on your player board is laid out in order of technology level. You always have to pull from the lowest technology available, but as an action, you can develop. Developing allows you to spend iron to remove tiles, unlocking more lucrative industry tiles. Brass is played over two eras, the Canal era and the Rail era. When all cards have been played, you score and remove all the canals and start over with railroad links. After the Rail era ends, you score a second time and the player with the most points is the best Industrial Revolution entrepreneur in all of Birmingham. There are some classic Euro games out there, ones that I believe are must-have, must-play if you're a Euro game player. And those would be like Puerto Rico, Through the Ages, El Grande, Agricola, and Brass has always been in that group of games. It is just a fantastic masterpiece of a game. I love the game. Now, we're talking about Brass Birmingham today, which is, like I said, its sequel game. It's a sister game to Brass, but it really does feel very, very much like Brass with some actually very interesting changes. Now, Martin Wallace, the designer of the original and designer of this one, essentially, he is my favorite game designer. And the reason is because I believe that his mind works differently than other game designers. He's a very unique guy in the game design space. His games are just wonderfully thoughtful. Most of them are very, very deep. And there's very, very few of them that I dislike. And I have lots of them here, and I just absolutely love them. Now, talking about Brass Birmingham, first off, both Birmingham and Lancashire, the upgraded components and the artwork are absolutely gorgeous, flawless. As a matter of fact, I would say that they're probably the most beautiful Euro games that I have in my collection, and boy, am I happy to have them. So I got exactly what I wanted when I wanted a second edition with beautiful artwork. Perfect production. Perfect. Now, talking about the gameplay. Still, both of them hold up over years. The original Lancashire, you would assume, if you've never played Brass before, never even heard of Brass before, you would assume it was designed a month ago. It feels like a modern board game. It has the sensibilities of modern board game design. Martin Wallace was such a progressive in the way that he designed games, and boy, does it hold up. Now, Birmingham, the one we're looking at today, the complexity of the game, essentially the basic core of the game is not that hard. Play a card, take an action. That's your turn. All of the different intricacies you could do with the actions,
It's not like a light game in any stretch of the imagination. It's, as a matter of fact, it's an extremely deep game, an immensely deep game. The complexity comes all with the decision making and the strategies of this game. Honestly, this game is probably the biggest brain burn of any game that I own. And that's all in, you have to decide what your strategy is going to be. Going into the game, you have to look at supply and demand, right? Because you have those commodity industries, the ones that are coal and iron and beer. In Birmingham, there's beer. And all of those are needed to supply other people with their actions, yourself and other players. And there's plenty of situations where supply and demand comes into play. There's none on the board. Like, people need coal, people need iron, and there's none on the board. And that's a situation where you can exploit that need to make the points, right? And it's almost like a game where you can't strike while the iron is hot. You got to strike while the iron is warming up. You have to be able to foresee that pretty soon there's going to be a run on coal or a run on iron, or we're going to have short supply. So you start planning and building those things for when that time comes. And then there's the inverse of it, where if multiple people have that plan and multiple people build too many coal plants or too many iron smelters, then there's coal and iron all over the board and you're not scoring any points because no one's taking it. It's such a delicate balance. You have to really read all of the players and what their intentions are and what you're going to need and if you can actually use it. It's such a brain burn. It's an amazing, amazing experience, particularly when you start to get it down, which I certainly haven't gotten it down yet because I'm still staring at that board, wondering what I should be doing every time. I know what I should be doing. It's just very difficult to get there, but you can get there. And another fantastic thing about this game is the fact that players can take your resources and you can take other players' resources or take your own. Like I mentioned with the coal, you take it from the nearest. So sometimes that could be an opponent. And in this game, you have to realize, because the first time you play it, you're going to think, oh, I want to be a self-contained little industry here. I want to make my own coal. I want to make my own iron. I want to build my own industries and sell stuff. You quickly realize that you kind of have to abandon that. You have to be okay with helping another person out, like taking that last coal and letting them flip it for points because you need it, because you're going to score more by actually doing it than spending all the time to make it yourself and then hoping that all of that coal gets taken away so that you can score for that time you spent as well as building this new industry. So it becomes a thing of, you have to understand that sometimes you're going to be helping each other out, which I think is a really neat concept in this game. Now I want to talk about links as well. Links, I didn't really mention too much about them in the overview, but links are a huge point score aspect as well. When you are putting links on the board, in the scoring phases, you will score each end. So if there's a bunch of industries flipped on one end and a bunch of industries flipped on the other end, it increases the amount of points each one of those links is going to score. And it adds a level of tactical positioning on the board. You have to make sure that you're in the right locations. Sometimes you can go in there and you could snipe other players who are trying to score big with their links, and you could just weasel right in there and throw your links down. Boy, like, that's another aspect of this game. There's just so many levels to the complexity and depth of where this goes. And another thing I love so much about it is it's really a race against the clock. I mentioned how both with the overproduction of coal and iron and how you want to build your own stuff and hope that all that coal gets taken away or all that beer gets taken away so you can score. The fact that there's a scoring in the middle of the game and then a scoring at the end of the game makes this a race against the clock. You're trying desperately to make sure that all of those things are flipped by the scoring phase, because if they're not, you're only going to score with them once, hopefully. So putting only things on the board that you know you can flip, or at least sort of setting up the next turn in some cases, but you're always trying to do things as quickly and as efficiently as possible so that you can get that double score, or at least score them for the first time. Because another thing about the game is when the Canal era ends, all the level 1 technologies are removed from the board. Only level 2 and higher stay on the board. So if you don't flip your level 1 technologies or industries in the first phase, they're lost. They were worthless for you to put there. That's great. It's another race against the clock to try to get those things on the board. And you can start building your second technology levels and higher so that they'll score in the second phase. But if you get those flipped, you score them twice. Damn, is this game good. It is just absolutely amazingly good. It's a deep, complex, brain-burning, wonderful experience of a Euro game. It's one of the best Euro games ever designed. This game and Lancashire. I think Birmingham, though it's newer and it was designed more recently based on original Lancashire, this is just as good as the original. It is absolutely wonderful. It changes just enough to make it feel like it should be a second game. They could have probably made an expansion where it added another board and some more tokens, but making it its own game, it's got legs enough to stand on its own, and you could play the first one and the second one right after each other and feel like it was a natural progression of playing this one with, ships and shipwrights and all that stuff, and then moving over to this one that has beer and pottery and that, and they feel different, but they work off of the same base core mechanics of the game. Wonderful game. If you're a Eurogame player and you don't have this, get this game. It is amazing.
Thanks so much, everybody. If you've enjoyed this video, please do us a giant favor by subscribing to the channel and clicking that wacky bell icon. If you're into board games, miniatures games, role-playing games, we have a bunch of audio podcasts you might enjoy. You can find those at thesecretcabal.com or on iTunes and Stitcher.